Hello, everyone, and welcome to another panel here at the SiGMA Roadshow Nordics and Netherlands edition. This panel is entitled The Dutch Technical Regulations, and I will be pleased to introduce Wesley Koch, who is here with me to discuss and who will be delving in deeper onto this topic. He is the key account manager at Internet Vikings. He comes from a background of commercial roles within the tech, finance, and iGaming, having started his career in the commercial field at a very young age, as early as 17, at the finance company, where he worked as a sales representative for a year and a sales manager for another year. Wesley obtained his degree in business economy from the Intercollege Business School in Netherlands and graduated with honors. So Wesley, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Now, to start off, can you give our viewers some background about your company, Internet Vikings, for context?
Yeah, of course. So Internet Vikings is predominantly a hosting company. However, we also cater for SEO services. One of the services we deliver is called brand protection, for which we, as I mentioned, it's purely an SEO service. And as I said earlier, predominantly we deliver data centers all across the globe, and obviously as well as the Netherlands and now the US.
All right, thank you, Wesley. Now I want to jump in ahead. What are the new regulations that are being implemented in Netherlands and the changes it's making?
Yeah, so the new regulations, they are, or they can be a bit confusing at times. There's a lot of re-regulations going on. The first bill passed back in 2013, where the KSA decided it's time to start regulating online casino businesses. And from there, a very long and rigorous process about re-regulations has been going on. But the KSA has always had a player first in their mind. So in the Netherlands, everything is about player protection, and everything is about how can we secure the players. And that has turned into what it is today. Now, the regulation will kick in on the 1st of October, where finally the licenses will be handed out. And obviously, there are a lot of things that are still not 100% clear. So there are still changes coming, and most of the changes have been made already. But as I mentioned earlier, it's a lot about player protection. There's even the Addiction Prevention Fund that has been set up now. There has been talks of a involuntary gam stop, where family members can sign somebody up if they think that things are getting out of control. It is not out yet. The regulation hasn't been completely set in stone. So you will see more changes coming into that. But in general, yeah, it's a very rigorous process.
All right, and Wesley, could you go over the key technical requirements of the new law and specifications in the market? It seems like there are operational restrictions like banning time bonuses or problem gambling, which can be determined technically. So could you go over that?
Yeah, so one of the most predominant technical requirements is the Netherlands has been looking very closely at other jurisdictions. Think of Sweden, Germany, the MGA. And so one of the things now is that they have decided that every operator needs to have a data vault. And this data vault needs to contain all the player information, transactions, deposits, withdrawals, your normal KYC documentation, and what have you. And this has been predominantly done because the KSA wants to have access to said information. And that stems from them needing to be able to check for any minors gambling, any fraudulent activity, and so forth. So that is one of the biggest requirements. Then every operator needs to have a physical data vault in the Netherlands. So one of those requirements would be, or a suggestion would be, for any operator going into the Netherlands, make sure that you go with somebody who knows what they're doing. Now, there are some other key technical requirements. We won't be diving into it all too deep because then we're going down into a rabbit hole. But for example, servers that are being set up in the Netherlands, they have to be able to take in data in specific file sets, specifically .xml and JSON files. And this then has to do with the KSA being able to access those files. Again, other key technical requirements. We're not 100% sure how it's going to look yet. But as I mentioned previously, there will be very specific GAMBAN or GAMSTOP equivalents where people can sign up if they feel that their gambling is getting out of control. Now, that is also going to be quite a technical process to get that in place. Specifically, if you think about the fact that the government is implementing ways where, as I mentioned earlier, family members can sign you up. So that begs to differ. How are they going to exactly do that? What kind of documentation has to be sent over? What kind of requirements does it take from the operator themselves? So that opens up a whole new box of questions. But I do think that it should be okay. We'll need to see how it all pans out, obviously. So we'll need to wait for the regulation to be completely done. But again, there's time before the 1st of October.
All right, fantastic insights. There have been so many delays of the new laws. What has caused all of this delay and now a third delay past September of this year? When do you think things will be all set and go live for the Dutch market? And who do you know is already committed to operate?
So I've mentioned this earlier. A bill was passed as early as 2013, where the government decided, okay, it's time to start regulating the online gaming market. And that stems from a very long history of them already having state-owned lottery. And now we're looking into online gambling as well, so online casino, live casino, and sports betting. So we're talking back 8 years since the government decided, okay, we need to start regulating. And one of the reasons it has been taking so long, taxation. There has been a case study. It's a bit of an older case study, so I'm not 100% sure if it's 100% accurate. But back in 2014, a case study was released where the ideal tax rate for optimal channelization of online gaming would be between 15 and 19%. Now, it has been very well known that at the moment, the KSA is aiming towards 28, 29%. So, yeah, it comes into effect with channelization. And we also need to consider the fact that what happens if the channelization goes the wrong way? What are operators going to do with such high tax rates? Are they going to drop the RTP? We don't know yet. So a lot of it is waiting and seeing at the moment. There have been several operators that have already confirmed that they're going into the market, which is great. Obviously, the more operators that go there, the more versatility that is being offered to the players. And again, it will help the channelization in the market.
All right, fantastic. And when we look at iGaming trends, Wesley, what is the biggest trend you have observed with online gaming based on the pandemic?
The trend has been going upwards quite significantly. We have seen an upwards trend in the amount of time players spend online, the amount of money that they play around. And obviously now with the Euros just being finished, the Olympic Games now going on, so sports betting has been taking up quite a significant trend. We've seen operators who have reported as high as 156% growth year on year, which is a very good thing, in my opinion. And we also need to look at the long-term effect. Will people remain in the online sphere, or when it's possible, will they go back to brick and mortar casino? So if we look at that, the way operators are going to market themselves, the way they um, the way they offer specific bonuses, the way they handle player retention, it's all going to be key factors in whether this remains a trend, yes or no. But again, we need to wait and see.
Fantastic insights. And now for operators who are going forward in today's marketplace, what are your top tips for them?
Research. A lot of it will come down to research. You need to know the market. You need to know what you can market and how you can market yourself. In the Netherlands, we know for a fact that marketing is going to be a little bit confusing at times. Marketing on TV ads have to be after 9 o'clock in the evening. And there are several more of these rules and regulations in place. So going into a specific market, if we look at purely the Netherlands at the moment, a lot of research is important. Now, we do know that the value per player in the Netherlands is quite high if you look at other markets like Germany or Sweden. And I think that if operators market themselves correctly, they have a really good chance of obtaining a large amount of their players, a large amount of those players. But again, a lot of it comes down to research. What do the players actually like? What kind of games do they play? What is the average retention? What can you cross-sell? And then obviously, what can you market and what can you not market? So those are some of the key features and tips from my perspective into going into the Dutch market.
Well, I'd like to bring you to the marketing side of things later on, but where do you see the key technology trend for online gaming companies 5 and 10 years from now?
For sure, we're going to see more regulations come into play. I would not be very surprised if the KSA follows suit with, for example, Germany or Sweden. So more technical requirements will be needed. For example, we know that in Germany there is a deposit limit. We know that every spin on a slot game has to have X amount of time in between. Sorry about that. So those are all small technical requirements that will be needed over time. Now, if we look at current technical requirements, they are not humongous. They are not hard to achieve. But if we look 5 years from now, I would not be very surprised if, as I mentioned before, we see more of those requirements come in. So for example, operators need to have deposit limits in place. Spin timings need to be adjusted. And one of the key technical requirements that I mentioned before, this one is already coming into play. We don't know exactly when it will come into effect, is self-exclusion. So those are going to be some of the more technical requirements. And we need to see exactly how it is going to pan out. But I do guess that we are going more towards what Germany and Sweden are doing at the moment. So I think that if we keep looking at those markets and see how they develop, we can almost guess where the Netherlands is going to.
Well, speaking of marketing, I wanted to get your insight on how the use of influencers and sports people or sports teams can be used in the markets and how can it be utilized?
So if we very specifically talk about sports people, there has been a very funny thing going on there where the KSA is now you cannot use one specific sports person, it has to be a team. And the funny thing is that we've seen that a lottery operator in the Netherlands has had a very big campaign with a very well-known sports figure, football figure. And so what resulted was the KSA fining the lottery operator. And even though everything is state-owned, they still fine them. So they cannot be hypocritical about what they're going to do. However, the campaign is still running at the moment, so yeah, it is a little bit in between the lines, what can and cannot be done exactly. But another thing that is going to be very interesting is the use of influencer marketing. Sorry. So influencer marketing is, again, quite open to interpretation. One of the rules that has been put forward is that if you use influencers, and whether that is Facebook, Instagram, or Twitch influencers, their following can never be X percentage of minors. And this can be confusing at times, because how do you measure exactly what percentage is minors and what is not? For example, I can go into Twitch without logging in, and I can watch a streamer, and I can follow their link, but I don't have to be logged in. So how do we measure the percentage of viewers or followers that are minors? So it's very open to interpretation at the moment. It will be straightened out along the line. But again, at the moment, it's very open to interpretation. How are you going to exactly measure that? Do we know an exact number already? No, we don't. So again, at the moment, it's still a lot of guesswork. But I think that a lot of operators can already start playing into. They can have specific Twitch streamers as soon as the regulation kicks in, start putting their brand forward. And that is going to be, eventually, it is going to take up more of the market space. So influencers will become more predominantly over time. And for sure that they will have a very good position in the market in terms of driving traffic. Now, to top that off, operators also need to consider their more traditional marketing, their more traditional SEO. The reason for that is that it is more of a long-term investment. Now, influencers are more of the more short-term investments. And in that case, SEO will be your more long-term investment. So you will see results further down the line. So it will be a bit of a mix and match, but influencers will definitely be very predominant.
Well, the Netherlands market seems to be very interesting. We're so excited to see what's about to come. So thank you, Wesley, for the great discussion and for your invaluable contribution to the show. We look forward to having you once again. So let's keep in touch.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks for the invite, and we'll speak soon.
You're very welcome. And that is it for myself and Wesley. I hope you enjoyed this panel. Thank you for being with us today, and we'll see you for the next one.